What's up, everybody? My name is Josh, and today I'm going to show you a tool that I developed, and it's pretty cool. So I've been flying since about 2015, and something that has constantly sort of persisted me was finding my ideal rates. I started in freestyle, then went over to racing, then went over to the cinematic side of the things, and then every part of FPV drones kind of like converged on itself. And I actually ended up with rates different for every single thing that I was doing. For cinematic, I kind of want something with a lot more yaw authority because I'm pretty flat and I want to focus on the subject. For racing, I'm at a really high camera angle and I'm trying to stay as smooth as possible, but I want the center sensitivity to be really low so I don't do a lot of drifting. And then for freestyle, I like things to be nice and smooth but still snappy at the end corners, right? But that kind of like tailored thing was there are a lot of people that use the same rates across all disciplines of FPV, but I often find that my rates are a little bit different or even significantly different, right? And so that's kind of the premise of this tool. It's to find rates that fit your own flying style, whether it's racing, whether it's freestyle, whether it's cinematic. And so I'm going to essentially show you a workflow today that encapsulates that. And we're going to go through a couple of motions. So first thing is like, what is RateFinder, right? So RateFinder is a tool that analyzes your stick data. It analyzes the confidence intervals of where each stick is relative to a certain sample time, right? And so if you have a lot of jerky movements that are moving outside of that confidence interval, it flags it as something that's an anomaly, and it offers recommendations on how to fix that, which is especially useful for racing because there are a lot of repeatable elements. There's corkscrews, there's spillenesses, there's ladders, and there's a bunch of combinations in between of that, right? And you're doing it at high throttle. And so really doing the same thing over and over and over again is really difficult if your rates aren't tuned specifically for yourself, right? So that's who it's for. It's for racing pilots, or it's for people that want to get a little bit more dialed, or they feel like they're fighting the quad, right? The idea here is not to fight the quad. Instead of saying I need to roll left and yaw left in order to turn left, I just want to say I need to go left. And so the idea, and I've always preached this from the beginning, at least for newer pilots, is think about it as muscle memory, where you're riding a bike. When you're riding a bike, you're not thinking, okay, I need to pedal my left foot and then pedal my right foot. No, it's just I need to go straight, or I need to turn left, I need to turn right, or I need to slow down or speed up. And so that's how I feel rates are in terms of FPV drones. It helps you feel more natural with your flying style, and so that's certainly the intention. The next thing is I'm going to give you a UI tour of the tool. There are a couple of buttons in which way you need to go, but they're pretty intuitive, and I'll show you when we get to that step. The next thing is we're going to go through sort of a flow of how to use the tool. And so that's binding your radio to the tool and making sure it's capturing data, calibrating your max stick deflection rate, and then going into the exercises to refine those rates over time. And so that's the 6 calibration exercises in VelociDrone, leading up to the Freefly refinement, and plus analyzing those results. And so I expect this process to take about 30 to 60 minutes. You can certainly do it faster, but I like to take my time, so 30 to 60 minutes is kind of where we're going to live. Yep, so we'll talk about the UI, right? So there's like a welcome screen. It'll show essentially 2 different buttons. The first is like finding my rates, and this would be used for starting from the beginning, starting with like stock Betaflight rates or stock actual rates. And then there's the second one where you like refine the rates. I have these rates that I know work really well, and I just want to make small little tweaks, and so that's what this button is for. The next is like the pilot profile. So every time you go into this application, you are assigning different metadata for the data that is being collected. And so that's your grip style, right? So that's whether you thumb or you pinch, or like it's a hybrid, how heavy or how light your spring tension is, what kind of stick ends you're running, and then what kind of like flying that you're doing, whether it's like racing, cinematic, or freestyle. The next is the axis calibration, like I mentioned, right? So assigning the roll axis, the pitch, the yaw, the throttle correctly, so it's mapping the right data. The stick deflection. So the way that this kind of works is you're calibrating like your full stick throw. So like when you go into a corner, but you don't like your stick ends going to 100%, so to the edge of the stick ends, but you actually like it going to about 60% of your stick ends. This is what that captures there and how it sort of like relays the feedback into your calculations. Next is sort of like your known rates, and so the known rates here are either Betaflight stock or actual rate stock, or these could be like profiles that you've used the tool previously. And then last but not least is the result screen. This is really where the bread and butter is. You can see the degrees per second for roll, pitch, yaw. You can see your throttle mid, your throttle expo, and then you also be able to make actual changes to the sensitivity for roll, pitch, yaw, and then also change the shape of the curve, and you'll be able to see that in real time, which is super valuable because often I change something and I'm like, it feels a little bit different. The idea here is keep the curve the same but make it faster or slower. Right. So so this is the workflow, right? We'll do the axis mapping, we'll connect the radio, we'll identify roll, pitch, yaw, throttle, we'll map the axes, and then we'll verify the live input. And then we'll calibrate max stick deflection, right? So this for me would be like 60%, and then we'll do the stick travel, and we'll also add some part of the deadband. Okay, so now let's talk about the calibration exercises. Essentially, it's going to be 6 different exercises. 5 are going to be sort of like static. They're built into the VelociDrone map, and it's called WT Racing RateFinder. And then number 6 is you're going to essentially choose a track that you know like the back of your hand. It must have lots of lefts and lots of rights and elevation changes, because that's what is essentially tracking the data. You don't want to choose a track that is just going left or just going right, because the data is going to be skewed. So that's what you kind of want to do there. And so exercise 1 is hover microcorrect. So you're not really going to be moving, you're just going to be focusing on a subject in the background, and you just want to hover there for 30 seconds. Exercise number 2 is 180 hard turns. So there's going to be 2 pylons, and essentially you just want to do figure eights for 30 seconds. Exercise 3 is a split S. So there's going to be 2 gates, and you're going to do left split S's and right split S's. So coming above the gate, rolling left, and then going through the gate, and then going into the opposite gate. Exercise 4 is corkscrews. So you're going to focus on right corkscrews. You're just going to hold it, and then at the end of the gate, you're going to transfer that to a left corkscrew. You're going to hold it. You'll do that for 30 seconds. The last one is the ladder, and so you're going to ladder up and you're going to ladder down. Make sure you do both lefts and rights. And then, like I said, exercise 6 is flying a known good track with lots of left, rights, and elevation changes. And so what this is kind of doing, this is a typo, it should be the WT Racing RateFinder. But what this is essentially doing is processing your raw stick data, and it's assigning it CPRs, CMRs, and MDIs. So CPR is your sensor precision rate, so it's like the data that is influencing your sensor sensitivity. Your CMR, which is your comfort max max rate, and so this is like your max degrees per second. And then your MDI, this is like your expo. So what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about the Freefly refinement. And so the idea here is we run the calibration exercises to give us a good starting point. And once we have those starting points, then we go into Freefly. We're going to do 3 passes with the rates that are first given, and then we're just going to iterate them over the course of 3 packs. And then after 3 packs, we're going to make a manual change. We're either going to increase our roll or increase our pitch or yaw or whatever you feel needs to go up. And then we're going to do 3 more passes at that. Then after those 3 passes, we're going to change the global curve shape. So we're going to amend the center sensitivity. We're going to amend the expo. We're going to amend the max degrees per second, whatever you feel might work, right? So that's sort of the general workflow, and let's get to it. Okay, cool. So this is RateFinder, and the UI is pretty simple. There are 2 buttons in the front, and then there's a 3rd option here to load a profile. This first option is if you are trying to find your rates starting from scratch, so starting from a known good starting point that is stock Betaflight rates or stock actual rates. The second button is for refining existing rates. So let's say you go through this tool and you're like, these rates feel great, but I want to tweak them a little bit more. That's what this button is for. And then, like I said, this last one is for loading a profile. So if I load this profile here, you're going to see these are all the profiles that I've sort of gone through my testing phases, but the latest one that I have is WT8. And so we'll come over here, and it's essentially going to show the results page, right? And so the results page is broken down into 4 different tabs. There's the rates themselves, right? So on the left-hand side here, we have the graph for roll, pitch, and yaw. On the y-axis, we have degrees per second, so that's how fast each axis is spinning. On the x-axis, we have the stick input percentage, right? So this is how much stick input we need to get that degrees per second. Below it, we have something that looks very similar, right? These are the rate table that we would normally see in a Betaflight configurator, as well as all of the throttle options. So for throttle mid, which is where your stick midpoint is for throttle in addition to your hover point. And then we also have expo. So this, if your quad is super fast, increasing that expo makes it a little bit slower at the bottom end of the sticks, which in turn might make it a little bit more manageable and easier to fly. On the right hand side here, we have the rate multiplier for roll, pitch, and yaw. And so these will amend the each axis independently. So if I move this up, what you're going to notice is the degrees per second for roll are the only ones that are changing. You can do the same thing for pitch, right? So now you can see pitch is moving, and then yaw is moving. And then on the bottom here is if I wanted to keep the degrees per second for roll, pitch, and yaw the same, but I wanted to amend the center sensitivity. Let's say I wanted to make it a little bit more fast, right? Making it a little bit more fast. If I select everything, so roll, pitch, and yaw, if I make it a little bit fast, you're going to see sensor sensitivity is now going up. If I wanted to make it a little bit softer, I increase it, and then you're going to see these values go down. But then also notice as I move this, see how the curve of the shape is moving, but the degrees per second are remaining constant. If I only wanted to do this for a specific axis, let's say for roll, I wanted to make it faster, I'll move the slider to the left, and now roll is the only one that is going up and moving. But if I wanted to make it softer, you do the opposite, right? And so this essentially holds true for the other 2 options, which is for max rate. So let's say I do it for roll, pitch, and yaw. It'll increase the degrees per second for max rate all at the same time, and then you're also going to notice the cumulative degrees per second also goes up, or it all goes down. This goes all the way up to 2x, right? And then you'll see the same thing for expo, right? If I move this slower, expo will go up. If I move to the right, expo will go down. So to the right is more linear, to the left is more curved. You can see how that is working within the graph. At the bottom here, you got a couple of buttons. So you have the Betaflight CLI and then also the actual rates CLI. So if you click these and then you paste them into a notepad, it's going to give you the values to plug into Betaflight, essentially. Then next you have the Save Profile button, and so what this does is it saves these values to the profile in which it's assigned. So this is WT8, so if I click Save Profile here, it would save all of these numbers to WT8. Last but not least is you have the Refine and Freefly. This is really going to be where your bread and butter is, and so as we move through this tool, these values are going to be changing, and we're going to need to essentially backtest them. And so Refine and Freefly brings you to this backtested area where if I click it, now it's sampling and it's recording data for roll, pitch, yaw, and throttle. And it's going to take that data and it's going to apply it to the new calculations for which your rates are going to be. And so let's say you did run this, you can either apply it to the existing values, or you can redo the pass, or you can just go back. And so what this is indicating, you're going to get like 3 different types of messages. It's either going to be red, orange, or green. You want it to be green, and this is essentially tied to the sample count, and we'll go over that. The sample count is a minimum of 30 seconds, but 90 seconds is best. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail after I go through the individual pages, right? So let's start from the beginning. So this is the main homepage, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with find my own rates, and we'll click this and we'll give it a profile. So I'm going to assign it WT9, Here we're going to assign the grip style, so whether you thumb, pinch, or hybrid. I hybrid, so I'm going to click that. Then we're going to assign the spring tension. Mine's not super light, but also not super heavy. It's about a 6, so that's what we're going to do there. And then you'll assign a stick type. So I have tall stick ends, and then we're going to change it to the flight style. So it's either racing, freestyle, or cinematic. In this instance, we're going to do racing. So once those are all selected, click continue. And what we're going to do here is we got to detect our radio. So plug your radio into USB, same as you would for connecting to any simulator, and then click detect radio. And then once you click the redetect radio, now you should see all of these axes populate, right? And so what we need to do first is we need to assign them. And so the way that you do it is you click the button, and then there's going to be a countdown. So when I click this, I move the roll axis through its endpoints, roll right, roll left, it'll detect it. So it's saying axis 1 is roll. And then we'll do the same thing for pitch. So right stick up and down because it's mode 2, and then yaw. And then so left stick, left and right. Make sure you keep throttle at 0 in that instance. And last but not least, we'll do throttle, so up and down. Cool. And so we can check to see what's working appropriately. So that's throttle. This is yaw. And then roll left, roll right, pitch up, pitch down. And if those all look good, then we'll say looks good. And so now what we're going to do is we are going to calibrate our max stick deflection. And so what this is really looking at is if you see this green line, that's going to be the value. So it's going to be the endpoint in which it's going to try to calibrate to. And then the orange bit, this cursor is actively moving. So this is going to be the sensor input. And so what this is going to highlight is your max stick deflection for the specific axis. So for me, I like my stick to be somewhere around here, as opposed to at the ends of the endpoints. So when I go into a hard corner, I don't want a full stick deflection. I want to be about here. And so that's what I'm going to calibrate it to. I'm going to calibrate it to about 60%. And so what you want to do is you want to get to 60, and then you want to take the orange cursor and make sure it doesn't go past the green line. And we'll do the same thing for pitch. Go to about 60, then hold it. Perfect. And then we'll do yaw, about 60, and then hold it. And then throttle, make sure that's always at 100%. Now you're going to see here that for yaw, I went a little bit higher. In order to fine tune it, it gives you the option to change it via slider. And so we're going to jump this down to 60%, and we're going to say it looks good. Next, we're going to go over to the known rate baseline. So this is where you either assign Betaflight rates, the stock ones, or actual rates. And so in this instance, we're going to choose Betaflight defaults. So this is the start of our calibration exercises. But the first thing that we need to do is we need to load the map in VelociDrone. And so if we go to VelociDrone, you want to type in WT racing RateFinder, and then it's going to be this map empty scene day, and we're going to click fly. And so here I'm just going to give you a rundown of what we're looking at. It's broken up into 5 different exercises. So this is exercise 1, it's going to be a hover point. This is exercise 2, it's going to be a figure 8 pylon. This is exercise 3, it's going to be split S's. Exercise 4, this is going to be a corkscrew, so we're just going to hold left cork, and then we're going to cork right, and we're going to do that for 30 seconds. Here's exercise 5, which is the ladder. So we're going to ladder left, up, and then ladder down, and then ladder right up, and then ladder down, etc. Right? And so let's get started. Let's give this a shot. So what we want to do first is we want to start the race. And when we do start the race, you want to, for the first exercise, lower your camera tilt down to 25 degrees. And the reason why we do that is because it's essentially a hover test. Okay, and so we'll go to 25 degrees, and the first thing you want to do is fly through the gate. And as you do fly through the gate, now we're going to land right in front of these purple pylons. And next, open up the menu and change your rates to Betaflight default. And once they're set to Betaflight default, go over to the tool and then click start. Now a timer is going to go down, and what we're going to do is we're going to hover. We're going to hover right in front of the circle, and we're going to use the purple lines at the bottom to try to stay in the same spot for this 30-second period. If you move significantly, that's totally fine. It's going to help calibrate your center sensitivity, but the idea here is not to really move. Great. So now that that's done, right, we're going to land. And the next thing that we're going to look at is we're going to go to the hard 180s. Now, in order to go to the hard 180s, before we move to exercise 2, we want to increase our camera angle. So increase your camera angle to whatever camera angle that you're familiar with. For me, it's 60 degrees, at least for racing. And then you want to navigate over to this gate and fly through it. And so the reason for this is because if you crash, it'll respawn you right back in front of the obstacle. So now that we're right in front, we will go back to the tool, we'll click start, and come back to VelociDrone. And so now what you want to do here, just do a bunch of figure eights. And do that for 30 seconds. Cool. Now that that's over, let's go to exercise 3. So let's fly through the gate. And these are going to be your split S's. So let's land. Navigate back to the tool, click start, go back to VelociDrone, and we're going to do our split S's. Split S left, split S right, left, right. Cool. So exercise 3 is done, so let's go to 4, and this is the corkscrew. So we'll run through the gate and then land. And then when you do land, navigate back to the tool, click start, go back to VelociDrone, and start doing your corkscrews. This doesn't need to be the fastest, but it does need to be consistent, so try to go slow. Try to be methodical about it. Great. So that's over. Let's go to exercise 5. These are our ladders. Go through the gate, land. Go back to the tool, click start, go back to VelociDrone, and we're going to start laddering up. So I'll ladder left. Then we'll ladder down. Ladder right. Ladder down. Great. So those are the first 5 calibration exercises. And now exercise 6 in this instance is the combo. And so what does combo mean? This is any map that you are super comfortable with, but there is a little bit of a criteria. You have to make sure that it has strong lefts and strong rights and some elevation changes. So choose the map that ever best fits that for you. For me specifically, it's the track in my backyard. So we are going to abort the race, and then we're going to change the track. And it's Sandlot S1, track 2. Cool. So you'll start the race, and then you'll navigate back to the tool, click start, and then try to run a lap without crashing. And if you do mess up, like I just did there, Click done, and then redo. And we'll start over again. Great. So the tool's done running. And so now what you're going to see here is you're going to see now it's collected a bunch of data. It's got 19,000 samples over the course of 30 seconds. It's got your CPR, your center precision rate. It's got your CMV, your comfortable max velocity, so your max degrees per second. And it's assigned that for roll, pitch, and yaw. If you weren't happy with that, click redo, then restart it. But for me, it was good. So now what we'll do is click view results. And when we do that, this is going to be the first recommendation from the tool, and this is going to be our baseline. So first things first, we're going to look at this and we're going to change our rates in VelociDrone. So I'm going to change it to actual rates, and then I am going to change my roll, pitch, and yaw. So let's do that. And then you also change your throttle mid, so from 0.5 to 0.64, and then your expo. Save it, and then let's start a new lap. So with this instance, this is going to be a part of the Freefly refinement. So we're going to click refine in Freefly, and then we're going to click start recording. And when we do this, what we want to do is we want to fly 3 laps. We want to get 90 seconds of data, roughly. The idea is not to go the fastest, it's to identify the endpoints. Is it too slow, which it likely will be, and where do your sticks mostly line up with. But do this for 3 laps and try to not crash. Like that. Okay, so now we'll go back to the tool and we'll click stop and update results. So what this is going to do is there's going to be a CLI window that pops up here, and it is changing the rates that it initially that is suggested from the calibration exercises, and it's amending it from that Freefly refinement. And so what we're going to see here is it's going to make changes to roll, it's then going to make changes to pitch, and then yaw, and then the main screen is going to change, and it's going to say, do you want to apply and continue? And we'll click continue, and it'll bring us back to the results page. Great, so analysis complete, and then we'll click apply continue. So you'll see here that our rates are a little bit different now, and we're going to input these values. So we're going to lower our center sensitivity for pretty much everything. And the idea here is you continue to run these tests until you get high convergence. So you don't want a lot of deviation between the rates that it recommends for you. Great. So now that those are saved, we will go back to the tool and we will do another Freefly refinement. This is exercise 2. Cool. And so we'll go back to the tool and we'll click stop and update results. And then we'll wait for roll, pitch, and yaw to change again. There's roll. Pitch. Great. So let's go back to the tool, click apply and continue. So we're going to see here that our rates are different again, right? So let me just show you. We're going to change our values for everything. 63. And then our throttle bit is now 0.57. So this is the start of exercise 3. First, before we do that, we got to make sure we start the tool again, right? So go back to Freefly and then start the tool. All right, let's go back to the tool, click stop and update results. You're gonna notice something here. The tool is essentially giving you feedback. And so you're gonna notice that it's gonna say stick movements look consistent, or you need to increase expo, or you need to increase your sensitivity, stuff like that. And so that's gonna be really good to look at. But let's just wait for the tool to give new results. And there we go. And we'll click apply and continue. So looking at the VelociDrone rates and looking at the rates that it's providing, you're going to notice that there's not a lot of change anymore, right? And so at this point, we have 3 good sample rates, and now it's really up to your preference. We're going to make some manual changes. So first things first, I'll set this to 61, increase my max degrees per second. This to 0.64, bump this up to 0.1. Great. And so now let's make some changes, right? So I personally want my roll rate to be a little bit higher, and so we'll go to the roll slider, and I'm gonna bump this up to somewhere in the 600 range. I'll get it to 600 degrees per second. And then looking at here, I want my center sensitivity to be a little bit more expo, right? So I'll move it to the right. It's going to lower that number. I'm going to give it about there. And then we'll click Save Profile. And the next thing is we need to copy these values over to VelociDrone. Great, and then that's good. Cool, and we'll save it. And now we'll go back to the tool, and we'll go back to Freefly, and we'll start a recording again. Great. Let's go back to the tool. We'll click Stop and Update Results, and we'll wait again. So that was one where we ran through the first calibration exercises. It felt pretty good after the third pack, but I wanted to increase my roll rate. So I made some manual changes on the rate slider for roll. In addition, I made some changes on the center sensitivity for roll specifically. So what you're going to notice here is now it's recommended some changes. So this is essentially going into exercise 2. So let's change those values. And drop our throttle mid, keep everything the same. Cool. So now let's go into the next exercise. And if you do mess up like this, you can always restart. So click stop and update, and then we'll redo this pass. Okay, so that's feeling pretty good, but there still is room for improvement. So go back to the tool and click stop and update results. Great, and then click apply and continue again. And let's see what's changed. So we're gonna lower our roll, increase the degrees per second. So you're gonna notice that these values are not really changing all that much anymore. Typically when this happens, it means that you have a high convergence rate, and so we're getting really close. Okay, so I've inputted the values into VelociDrone, and let's try this again. This would be the third test after making manual changes in the tool. And don't forget to start the recording. Okay, I crashed a lot, but it's feeling a lot better. So we'll click stop and update results. And I'm not going to make any manual changes because I think we're really close, and so we're just going to keep updating this until we hit a PB. Apply and continue. And let's see. Very incremental changes. That's what we like to see. And then we'll go back to VelociDrone and I'll show you the changes that we made. Then let's run it again. don't forget to go back to the tool and start your recording. There we go. So that is honestly feeling pretty good. I messed up personally on the last one, but I'm pretty sure that would have been close to a 20 there. So we're gonna stop and update results. I'll show you the rates. There we go. And we're gonna apply and continue. And so let's change the rates once more. And then we'll save. Cool. So now I'm gonna run this one by itself, and we're gonna see how this feels, because I think we're really close. Man, that feels really good. I think we're done, to be honest. I mean, I messed up a couple of times, but that's just drone racing. However, I feel that these rates are kind of where I want to live. So I'm going to keep this. I'm going to save the profile. The cool thing, so let's take a look at the results tab really quickly, is you can actually view the different logs, right? So the latest is number 7. So if I wanted to, let's say, look at the first log, you can see what these numbers would have been on the first log, and you can track the progress over time, so you can see like what's changing, which is pretty cool. And so if I look at this one, which is my last one, the one that I like the most, or let's say I wanted to look at the previous one, you could make those distinctions, right? So now let's talk about the diagnostics. So this is also kind of like a good criteria to see if everything has gone well. And so you kind of want to look at the following, right? Did you get enough samples through like the different exercises? Are your sticks matching what your history has been showing? And so that really ties into consistent maneuvers across the exercises. in addition to rate fit. So these last two are like super important. So this is your correction frequency going down, and then also your rates converging. So remember when we were looking at these different rates here compared to this one and the second one, these rates were super different. But if we look at number 7 versus number 6, these values are pretty similar. Like you're only changing it a couple of points. So that's how that's important. And so if we go down here, you have a lot of diagnostic data, right? I like to look at this one. So this shows that my corrections for roll, pitch, and yaw are all going down. Essentially what jerk is, it's like how quickly you're moving the stick. It's kind of inevitable for racing because you're always going to get these like full stick deflections. But I'm getting those full stick deflections, but it's feeling smooth and I'm correcting less. So I'm not having a bunch of micro corrections, which is freaking awesome. And so that's what you kind of want to see. You want your corrections to go down. And then at the bottom here, it'll give you a summary of what your raw rates were and then what your rates are with the multiplier in addition to what you changed on the global curve shape, right? And so because I saved these values, right, you can save profile again. You can go to profiles and then they're always going to live here. And you can also load and switch between different profiles. But yeah, anyway, that's the RateFinder tool, and I hope you find some use out of it. I'm really excited, and I'm really want you guys' feedback. I want to make this thing the best that it can be. I'm finding that it's helping me with my flying, and I'm super curious if it'll help you. So yeah, thanks for your time. Appreciate you sticking through this with me, and happy flying.